having car problems? Well, with Rhoda, getting them fixed is as easy as ordering takeout. They'll come pick up your car for free, do any repair or maintenance needed, and return it right to your driveway. They'll even give you a complimentary video inspection of your car so you can see what needs to be done. Perfect for those of us that maybe aren't so car savvy. Book your appointment online at roda.com. And lucky for you, CityCast listeners get a 20% discount on any service for up to $100 off. Just use the code CityCast20.
Today on CityCast DC, we are talking about DC's clear out of homeless encampments. We're talking about a city government whistleblower lawsuit. And, alas, we are talking about what you need to know about the new pandas. I'm here with Axios' Cuneyt Dil and my CityCast colleague, Julia Karen. Today is Friday, October 18th. I'm Michael Schaefer, and here's what DC is talking about. Hey, CityCast DC listeners, before we get into today's roundup, Julia and I have some exciting news. Next week, we are kicking off our fall member campaign.
Yeah, I know that this sounds kind of hokey and played up, but I am genuinely pumped about this. Mike, I bet you are pumped about this. Probably more pumped than y'all are about the return of the pandas. And I promise we will get to those pandas. I promise. But here's the deal. We are a small team. There's like 6 of us that make the show and make the newsletter. And it's your membership that helps us continue to bring you the best of DC, including the pandas.
The official campaign starts Monday, but guess what? You do not have to wait. You can join us right now at membership.citycast.fm and get a head start on supporting us. Plus, anyone who signs up gets to listen to the podcast ad-free.
Listen, I know that lobbying might be played up around here, but think of us as donning our capital W Washington hat and officially lobbying for your support, even though we tend to cover the little W Washington stuff that matters to all of you. Again, that's membership.citycast.fm. Thank you for being part of the CityCast DC community, and we can't wait to see you next week.
All right, on to today's stories. Hey, Cuneyt.
Hey, Mike.
So you wrote this week about encampment clearance. And by encampment, I guess we mean like a place where there are a lot of people sleeping outdoors over multiple days, maybe with some infrastructure they have created. And the city has been clearing more of them than it used to.
Yeah, I looked at homelessness in the city, and this is for a reporting project that Street Sense has organized for the past few years, where media shines a light on homelessness issues for the week. And I asked the city for some data on encampments, and I found out they're increasing how many they're clearing per month. On average, they've cleared about 8 encampments so far this year, monthly. And, that's up from 6.8 encampment engagements, as they call it, the euphemism for when they go in and clean up an encampment or they close down a park to get rid of tents there.
Wait, is that because there's more encampments, or is that because they're just that they are more energetically, policing these sorts of things?
So it's not clear to me. So DC has 74 encampments they're taking a look at. If I had to guess, a lot of the clearings were not happening, obviously, during the pandemic. If I had to guess, there's probably some that they're now reaching, or they are clearing encampments that were sprouting out after a different encampment was cleared. I mean, this is like a game of whack-a-mole for the city. And if you clear one encampment, a lot of the homeless people move to a different encampment or set up a new one, or they move before the encampment's even cleared. It's a real question of how effective are these clearings if you're just moving people around and not addressing the root causes.
But yeah, you wrote that homelessness had gone up in the last 2 years?
Yeah, so it's gone up in the past 2 years. Right. And I mean, you hope the clearings or whatever policies that your city is implementing will take those numbers the opposite direction, but it's gone up actually for 2 years.
Why is that? I mean, is there a theory of the case?
Yeah, I mean, part of it is it's still below the pre-pandemic number, but it is rising. There are many, I think, perennial reasons. DC offers more homelessness resources than other regional places, so you find a lot of unhoused people do come to DC to get more support. It's obviously high cost of living in the district. On top of that, you have a lot of pandemic programs that are geared for low-income renters or homeless people ending.
But wait, there's a sort of irony in what you said, or a contradiction or something, that like if people move here, if people who do not have homes relocate their physical selves to DC because it has more resources, presumably, one of those resources would be the resource to put you in a place to live, and yet we're talking about people who don't avail themselves of that, or are not, don't have access to that because they are living in these encampments.
Yeah, I mean, like DC does have resources, but doesn't mean it's reaching everyone, obviously. But when you look at it region-wide or even nationwide, DC does have more supports than other places. So it does become a place where people will come to DC, or they might escape more restrictive measures in other parts of the country or the region.
So how is this connected to a Supreme Court ruling that came out in, I think it was June?
Yeah, exactly. So in June, the Supreme Court allowed cities to ban people from sleeping in public spaces. Now, this was mostly affecting cities in the West, including a small town in Oregon. They were seeking more power to restrict homeless encampments, people sleeping outdoors. But what we found is that across the country, a lot of cities are feeling emboldened now to enact more restrictive policies as a result of that ruling. So Virginia Beach, for example, picked up its pace of encampment clearings. I asked DC if it's affected the city's policy at all. It says it hasn't. The city says, it won't change its policies, that it'll always sort of, quote, treat all people with dignity and respect while they try and get rid of some of these encampments and move people into some resources. But at the same time, we have found, even if it's maybe not directly tied to that ruling, clearings have gone up, like I just said before. So,
wait, can you explain the politics of this locally a little bit? That it seems to me, there's a lot of people who don't feel comfortable with these homeless encampments in places where they recreate or commute or walk or whatever. There's other people who think like there's something like really undignified and wretched almost about having people live on the streets and not offer them shelter. There's other people who will argue that there's something sort of cruel and unfair about someone's got nothing but a tent, even clearing them out of that. But how does it break down within like who's who in the sort of city, like elected official and advocate world?
Well, I think you're exactly right. That is the lay of the land. You have in DC, I think the mayor is trying to put more resources toward let's move them out of encampments into housing. How effective that is, that can be debated. Obviously, advocates don't think it's effective. Their main concern is these encampment clearings happen very suddenly at times, or homeless people move into a different location and you're not actually addressing the root cause. That's been an ongoing years-long issue. There are progressive lawmakers who want to invest more money in housing and homelessness help and getting people out of sort of encampments into more permanent solutions. But that becomes much harder now going forward because, like I said, you have pandemic money ending. That's the relief from the federal government during the pandemic. All that housing aid is ending. And you also have a city where the budget is getting more and more constrained. So we're actually moving in the wrong direction. Like I said, homelessness has gone up for 2 years in a row.
Wait, so are there people saying that clearing these encampments is like actively a bad thing, that they should not be cleared, they should be left alone?
I think what you'll find is slow down the pace of them. And in some cases, I think you might get a few people who don't want them cleared at all unless there's a perfect solution for them lined up, which is get them in housing immediately. I think most mainstream politicians in DC want them connected to resources that will better serve them versus being on the street where it's dangerous for the homeless person as well, and they're not able to get health and security. being outside.
So, like, where does the DC government go from here? Like, are other places that generally people who are houseless stay at, are they saying, hey, like, we're going to clear you out now?
Yeah, so one example is the DC Public Library System just issued a new set of protocols. They want to prevent people from sleeping in and outside the MLK Library downtown, which people might recall pre-renovation, it was a big gathering place and hub for homeless people, and they were able to meet advocates and sort of get connected to resources as well. But it was a sort of a big congregate of people outside. After the renovation, the city has tried to keep the area clear. And now the library is implementing some new sort of what they call protocols, which is just, they're going to take more seriously if they see someone sleeping, or if a library patron is bothered by something maybe unsanitary or something in the library, they're going to take a harder stance on moving those people out of the library perimeter. And so this is a brand new effort they've just launched as well.
I mean, I got to ask, is that controversial? I mean, it seems to me, if you're the library, you're in the business of trying to like connect people to books and reading and learning and so on. And it is kind of part of your job to make it an environment where people aren't like sleeping.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough for the library staff too. Like, they have to take on this additional sort of role. But the library did cite incidents of violence, medical emergencies, unsanitary conditions, and drug use. That was sort of what propelled this new policy.
DC voters, I'm Lisa Rice, native Washingtonian, proposer of Ballot Initiative 83. Let's make politicians work harder with 2 changes to our system. 1, let independents like me vote in taxpayer-funded primary elections. And 2, implement ranked choice voting to vote for your favorite candidate and rank your backup choices. Candidates need over 50% to win. Flip your ballot and vote yes on 83. Paid for by Make All Votes Count DC, Philip Pinnell, Treasurer.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up during inflation, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold!
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See detail.
I was sort of obsessed this week with the DC whistleblower lawsuit. I don't know if you saw that or covered that. But, basically a woman had been fired from the city government contracting office. City claimed it was because she had a toxic relationship with her staff, it was bad at her job, etc. She claimed it was because she blew the whistle on what she saw as some shady contracting. In this case, it was something called contract splitting, which is, any contract more than, I think, $1 million gets reviewed by the DC Council. But if you split the contract into smaller chunks, it doesn't have to be reviewed. And with less transparency, presumably there is more room for shady things. She filed suit over her firing. The city, led by the city attorney general, defended this energetically, but lost. So she's been awarded like $3 million for this. I don't know, and I don't know that there's been any like really good reporting on whether what she saw was in fact shady, or was, whether they're splitting the contract, as the city said, because it was different services at different times and it's more convenient or whatever. But it struck me as, the indictment of Trayon White, about which, was based on allegations of steering contracts. It's another sort of tawdry thing in the sort of orbit of city government. And, I'm curious whether, are people speaking out? Should people speak out? Is there sort of gestures of confidence that need to be made about the cleanness of our government? I mean, this is on the most sort of rudimentary thing of like, are we getting good value for the money we spent?
Yeah, it's not a great look, right? And we're talking about contracts over $1 million that need DC Council approval. And just so it's complicated, but basically the allegation was that they were splitting it under $1 million, right? And approving it that way instead of getting the full oversight and view of the council. You just had someone approving them.
Yeah, I mean, I will also say with regard to this, like this woman, Maureen Hale, she was fired in April of 2017. So this has been like 7 years basically since she was fired from this position. And clearly the jury in this case felt like, yeah, like this seems shady the way that she tells it, where she was fired for bringing this up.
I can imagine being in a bureaucracy where you're like, I just want to get this contract done. I don't want to have to send it to the council for a review, which will take time, blah, blah, blah. Let's just like chop and make it go faster with no sort of larcenous intent. But again, I feel like a government, particularly this government, which, where we have this unfair congressional oversight thing, sort of has to be, more clean than anyone else. And avoiding things that are a bad look seems like particularly important.
I will also say a bad look is having to pay this woman $3 million because of this screw up, right? Like if these contracts are like maybe over like $1 million, like say $1.5 million or $2 million, like you are now, because of the potential lack of oversight, paying this one more potentially than these contracts, which is kind of wild to me.
$3.4 million, $2.5 million for emotional distress.
GJ, has anyone in there, in city government, elected officials, expressed, outrage about this or, sort of any sort of feelings about the optics of it?
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I haven't seen like a press conference or a statement from someone like the council chairman, for example, who would say the recent episodes of corruption or alleged corruption are becoming a stain on City Hall. I haven't seen that kind of a thing. I don't think that'll happen. Maybe part of it is this seems like it was an issue 7 years ago and not necessarily coming out now. It's not something wrong at this point in time, but there could obviously be things like this happening. I think you have to get a steadier stream of these kinds of individual episodes of malfeasance for it to boil over. But if there's a third shoe to drop here, then perhaps we might have a situation where you're looking at Trail Line, you're looking at this, you're looking at something else that could cause a bit more of an uproar.
What does this impact you guys, like, trust in city government? And again, I don't mean trust in like the police to show up when you call them or the garbage to get picked up, but like trust in that there isn't a bunch of theft going on.
Yeah. I mean, it's a question of how much does it break through to the average voter. Yeah, better than me, but I think a decade plus ago in D.C., cleaning up government was a thing you could run on. I mean, the mayor won in 2014, sort of saying she wrote an ethics bill. I don't see that being a issue right now, at least, even though we have some of these episodes of malfeasance.
Right. And I just sort of wonder sometimes if that's like naivete, that we sort of bought the narrative of everything's back to clean, and that's not true. So speaking of things being back, you guys.
Great segue.
Do my best. We've spoken uncharitably about the pandas in the past.
Yes, we have.
But they're pandas, and they're back. And they flew into Dulles from Chengdu with a stop in Alaska on the way, just to refuel. They were not being shown at Alaska Zoo. And then we're driven from Dulles, like, I guess, through downtown in FedEx trucks. And, Latute, Washington is excited about this. Julia, you may be less excited, although you're a neighbor of them now. But what do we need to know? Like, when can we see these black and white goofballs?
So here's the deal. There's two pandas. They're both 3 years old. One is named Bao Li, and the other is named Cheng Bao. Bao Li, fun fact, is the son of Bao Bao, who was a female giant panda who was born at the zoo in 2013, which is kind of cool, and is also the grandson of Mei Jiang and Tiantan, the zoo's most recent panda couple residents. So, little familial relations going on here, which is kind of nice. For people who want to see the pandas and clog up my commute forevermore in front of the zoo, which is unfortunate for me, but good for you, I guess, their public debut is January 24th. However, if you are a zoo member, You can get a preview of them from January 10th to 19th. Fun fact, January 10th is my birthday. So happy birthday to me for the crowds going to see the pandas, I guess.
Well, I didn't realize this, but, during the pandemic, the zoo, whose pandemic behavior was one of my least favorites, that, it closed for a long time, it was outdoors. And then they instituted this sort of timed admission thing. They never got rid of the timed admission thing. It used to be that you could just, you could be walking along Connecticut Avenue and decide to duck into the zoo for a couple minutes.
You still have that? Is it still timed? Oh,
yes.
My gosh.
I mean, I don't know if it's timed, but you still have to go online and get a pass. It's free, but you got to do it, which means that the kind of, I used to, when I'd go running, I would run through there. But the kind of seat of the pants swing by the zoo is a little trickier than it used to be, which maybe will be good for Julia's commute.
God, I hope so.
And it requires a little more premeditation to see these pandas, but I think that's probably a good idea because, it was always a long line. But, I would think that when everyone's in line for the panda, you can go see some of the other exhibits without anyone getting in your way.
I will go to see the pandas, but will the pandas be there to see me? Because I feel like
fabulous question.
Pandas have been shy over the years. I feel like
shy is a polite word for
right.
it. I think they've been surly, indolent.
Yeah, but people are also obsessed with these pandas. And if you're wondering if they're going to be cute and neat to look at, apparently Michael Brown Paulsgrove, who's the curator of the Asia Trail and the giant pandas, said that Bao was precocious and a little bit playful. So you actually might get to see Bao in the flesh, potentially lumbering towards you, which,
I might take it with a grain of salted bamboo there.
We agree.
I think the curators at pretty much any museum in the Smithsonian collection will tell you that exhibit is pretty awesome.
That is true.
I mean, I hope they will. It's their job.
Yes, for sure. One thing I think to keep in mind with these pandas, if you don't get to see them on January 24th, if you're not a zoo member and you can't see them from January 10th to 19th, they will be here for 10 years until 2034 at the cost of about $1 million per year. That goes towards panda conservation efforts. This is a deal between basically the US and China to kind of study how pandas do stuff. I will say, in terms of actual money spent on these pandas, it's been a little bit absurd. Apparently, the zoo spent more than $25 million on renovating the panda enclosure. That included updating both the indoor and outdoor habitats to improve the safety to maximize the space for the pandas to roam. And they also installed new climbing structures and water features and rock work for exercise and play. Although, based on how often pandas sleep, I don't know how often they'll be using them. Also, there was a new ventilation system that improves the air quality and temperature control there. So, a lot of effort going into these pandas, guys. $25 million worth of effort.
I assume this, you can see them earlier if you're a member, is a great business opportunity for the zoo to boost its own revenue stream. But there's also a bunch of businesses around there that I think are pretty psyched about, particularly in winter, the crowds this is likely to draw.
Yeah, there's this whole kind of panda economy that goes around, at least from my knowledge, I know, in front of the zoo. So Baked by Yale is there, and Duke's Counter. I'm a frequenter of Duke's Counter because it's close and it's walking distance, and I can get cheap beer. A lot of people are excited because they're going to get a lot more foot traffic. And if you have a panda special of some kind, right, like a drink or a meal or something like that, people get really into it and really excited. I remember when they had the paper Metro cards with the pandas on them, and people used to keep them because they were like, oh my God, the pandas are on the Metro cards, it is actual business that affects people.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Julia.
No problem, Mike.
Cuneyt, awesome to see you, man.
Always a pleasure, Mike.
Oh, and before we go, since we've been talking about zoo memberships, we should remind you about CityCast memberships. Our fall membership campaign starts next week. But if you already know you love CityCast DC and you want to support our show, you can sign up right now at membership.citycast.fm. You'll get access to our show ad-free, and you'll help us keep bringing you great local stories every day. Thanks again, and we will see you on Monday. And that is all for today here on CityCast DC. Our production team this week was Priyanka Tilve, Julia Karen, Ash Durbin, and Francisco Kilgore. Newsletter editors Kayla Cote-Simmerman and Selena Say Reynolds wrote our fabulous newsletter Hey DC this week. And our hosts are Bridget Todd and me, Michael Schaefer from Politico. Music is by Alex Roldan. If you enjoyed the show, why not text your panda enthusiast friend and let them know that we have been uncharitable once again. We'll be back Monday morning with more news from around the city. Bye.